I think this book could be called hating as opposed to loving, because I don't think there's a lot of loving going on anywhere in this book, except maybe between the Victorian era maid lesbians. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Read Good, Draw Bad, where we love to read really good books and then draw pretty bad drawings about them. Today's book is a book that's really annoying to research because it's written by the man with the most generic name you've ever conceived, writing with a title that is the most generic title he could have ever written. We are reading today the book Loving by Henry Green. Now, just so you know, I am doing a reading challenge where I'm reading the top 100 novels of the 20th century as decided by the Modern Library. You can find more information in the description below. First, a TLDR on this book. This book is about being a servant in the country, in Ireland specifically. And we follow the lives of 4 or 5 main servants throughout the book as they go about their day-to-day life, and as they try to navigate their careers during the middle of World War II. Now, this book teaches you a lot about the differences of what's called upstairs or downstairs living, where different servants are relegated to different parts of the house or the manor or the castle, where aristocrats are supposed to have whole areas that are designated just for them. So that's why you often have things like servants' quarters and even things like servants' stairways and servant doorways, so that servants are seen but not heard. And let me tell you, when it comes to these staircases, there were definitely a few safety violations involved. In terms of the hierarchy, butlers or the main housekeeper were at the top of the hierarchy and often got specific quarters, while maids and lower class butlers, if you want to call them that, were often relegated to the basement or to the attic. For a long time in the 1900s, maid service and butler service was one of the most popular working class jobs. It was a good way to have a career as a working class person. And this book describes and shows some of the intricacies of being a servant in a household and what that means around the time of World War II. Now, there are 3 total main events in this book, and I say that because in reality, a lot of nothing happens. And it's one of those not a lot happens books. The first event is the main butler dying and his position being taken over by the ambitious but younger Charlie Raunce, which causes quite a stir with a lot of the other maids and manservants. The second event in the novel is that a peacock dies, and this causes quite a problem with the head mistress of the family, Mrs. Tennant, because as you know, rich people like to have weird pets and get really fixated on their weird hobbies. And this lady was obsessed with her peacocks, and she was also obsessed with that her servants might be stealing from her, which technically they were. Don't let the peacocks die. That was like what half the novel was about. Now, the most important part of this novel, which I suppose brings up the title Loving, is the love story between Charlie Raunce and Edith, who is one of the maids at this castle. Manor. Whatever. Now, thematically, I think you could say this book is about a few things. The first is the complexity of the social relationships and the individual hierarchies between the servants themselves, because not every servant had a similar position. Most servants thought they were better than other servants, and some got perks, like Charlie Raunce, for being the head butler. So there was a bit of a hierarchy in the serving class. Another thing was about how servant gossip fueled the various events throughout the novel, and also influenced those events, often causing harm because there was speculation about what was true or not true, and the servants, you know, because they had nothing better to do, they just stoked the fire to see what people would say. And as you know, gossip, not good, but a lot of fun if you're really bored. Lastly, there's the importance of the difference between a nobility class and a working servant class, and how the aristocracy slowly is fading away, and that this particular place and this particular house is an example of how the new noble class, about how the new rising nobility in this era has come to be. Also, we have to talk about the setting of this book. This book is set in Ireland during World War II in a place called Kinalty Castle. It's well removed from the war, but the fear of war is present and feels like a lurking danger throughout this book for all of the characters. When they're not gossiping about the war or each other, they're gossiping about the Tennant family. And the Tennant family is really interesting because they're more of a merchant class family who have bought Kinalty Castle and did not inherit it from somewhere. So they are money rich, but they're not super connected to Kinalty Castle, whereas the case was you could be a noble and be very poor, but have a great historical background that really matters to the nobility class. But that was slowly changing as different kinds of people were coming up with more money. Now, even the news of one of the most horrible wars in the world could not keep the servants from discussing what was really important, which is, where is Mrs. Tennant's lost ring? Because someone stole this ring and no one is quite clear who, and there is a lot of finger pointing throughout this novel, and this occupies a huge amount of the plot of the novel for no good reason. Lastly, I should point out that this is a stream of consciousness book, and if you want to know what that means, I don't really know, but here's a definition. This is a narrative style that tries to capture the process of people's thoughts as they're hearing and responding to other people, and as they are thinking about important things that matter to them in responses to people's various emotions and actions. So it feels not necessarily natural, but kind of a bit chaotic and jumbled, as sometimes our feelings and thoughts often do. In this particular book, you're going to find from paragraph to paragraph, sometimes from sentence to sentence, we switch between one character's viewpoint to another character's thoughts and emotions to another character's actions. Now, you don't really need to know all the characters of this book to really understand it, other than Edith and Charlie Rance and Edith's best friend Kate, who is also a maid. If you can focus on this aspect of the relationship between Kate and Edith and Charlie Rance, I think you may come to really enjoy this book, if you can handle the fact that the plot doesn't always hold through. Now, on to the review. This book is a book for lesbians, and I'm here to tell you why. I really appreciate that the author was really interested in gay rights back in the 1900s, because this book is about women touching each other and giggling a lot. And I'm just going to read you a passage that is very similar to several other passages in this book. Kate, I'm getting too hot. Take off some of your clothes then, silly. Come on, I'll help you. Then she tickled Edith to make her shift, but she made it easier for Kate by moving her body here and there as was required. It's only your old uniform, Kate said, and soon Edith was lying almost naked. To be clear, the main plot of this book is about a man and a woman getting married, but you wouldn't know it you wouldn't know it. After rereading passages, I'm convinced that Kate is full-on a lesbian, while Edith is kind of bisexual in a I tried it once in college kind of way. I think that Kate is annoyed that Rance is stealing her best friend away, and perhaps her friend with benefits, and the relationship between the three of them evolves throughout the book, and it's really fascinating to watch how Kate learns to deal with Edith going off with Rance. I'm somewhat convinced that repressed lesbians drove the sale of this book and continue to drive the sale of this book, but really this is another case of a female lead and a beautiful best friend, and the best friend being pushed away for a dumb jock, or in this case, a dumb butler. All jokes and odd sexual tension aside, for me this book was not a fun book to read. I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure most people today would love this book because I don't think most of the issues raised in this book are relevant to today. Regardless of symbolism, I don't think this book is relevant outside of its era because we're not interested in master and servant relationships like they were back then. I mean, maybe some people are, but, not like that. And even if we were, I think there are better examples of a plot that takes place in this time period that explores some of these issues that's not this book by a man with a generic name. So if you want to read a really amazing book that has a servant love story that talks about the complexities of a world war, as well as the masters involved and a servant in the background trying to navigate things, I would highly recommend you read the book by Kazuo Ishiguro, Remains of the Day. I might do a review of this book in the future if anyone is interested. Okay, let's be happy we are never looking back at this peacock-infested castle ever again, and we will be moving into a new, different kind of modern book. In fact, we're going to be reading one of my favorite books from my childhood, which is Call of the Wild by Jack London. So get ready for some snow, because winter is coming. Not yet, I think it's almost summer right now, but you get the picture. Now, if you like this review, please like, share, and subscribe. And you can hit the bell notification in case you want to know the next time I release a new video. Also, I would love it if you would leave a comment and tell me if you like this book or if this book made a great impression on you. But I'd love to hear from someone who really enjoyed this book and its writing. What are you reading this week? Tell me in the comments below. I'm really looking forward to discussing the next book in this reading challenge, so we will see you next time. And as always, stay curious, stay reading.